Maybe we can make Jose Coro.
A chorus, yeah.
We two run, guys.
John's the music man.
I only play the stereo. You can do 16. We're done.
Okay, all right. Go for it, Sean.
Alrighty. Our story until now has presented two kinds of situations in which culture of learning manifests itself. As two friends accompany each other in action, and as a group of people engaged in the same area of activity come together to reflect on their experience, in this section, we will explore the question of learning in very general context, knowing that we will come back to this theme later in the unit. In recent decades, the Universal House of Justice has given the Baha'i a world of great deal of guidance in relation to the posture of learning that must distinguish the community as it pursues successive global plans. Let us examine a few paragraphs from one of the messages of the House of Justice. In this case, to the Baha'is of Iran, which describes the dynamics of learning in the overall context of contributing to an ever-advancing civilization. The question that occupies the worldwide Baha'i community then is how it came to best contribute to the civilization, building the process as its resources increase. It sees two dimensions to its contributions. The first is related to its own growth and development, and the second to its involvement in society at large. Regarding the first, Baha'is across the globe is the most unassuming settings are striving to establish a pattern of activity and the corresponding administrative structures that embody the principle of the oneness of humankind and the convictions underpinning it, only a few of which are mentioned here as a means of illustrations. That the rational soul has no gender, race, ethnicity, or class, a fact that renders intolerable all forms of prejudice, not the least of which are those that prevent women from fulfilling their potential, engaging in various fields of endeavor shoulder to shoulder with men, that the root cause of prejudice is ignorance, which can be erased through the educational process that make knowledge accessible to the entire human race, ensuring it does not become the property of a privileged few, that the science and religion are two complementary systems of knowledge and practice by which human beings come to understand the world around them, through which the civilization fanaticism. While science without religion, what did I skip this?
That religion without science soon degenerates into superstition and fanaticism. There you are.
Okay, while science without religion become the tool of, I'm really losing my place here, becomes a tool of crude materialism, that the true prosperity, the fruit of the dynamic coherence between the material and spiritual requirements of life, will recede further and further out of reach as long as the consumerism continues to act as an opium to further and further outreach as long as the consumer continues to act as an opium to the human soul, that justice as a faculty of the soul enables the individual to distinguish the truth from falsehood and guides the investigation of reality. So essential, the superstitions, beliefs, and outworn traditions that impede unity are to be eliminated, that when appropriately brought to the bear on social issues, justice is the single most important instrument for the establishment of unity. that work performed in the spirit of service to one's fellow human beings in a form of prayer, a means of worshiping God. Translating ideals such as these into reality, effecting a transformation at the level of the individual and laying the foundation of suitable social structures is no small task, to be sure. Yet, the Baha'i community is dedicated to a long-term process of learning that this task entails an enterprise in which increasing numbers from all walks of life, from every human group, are invited to take part.
Wow, that was quite a bit, right?
I started losing my place.
Thank you, Sean.
This part where it says the rational soul has no gender, that really threw me for a loop. I had never thought about it as our souls not having a gender, but Justice over in Indiana.
Saint Rainy.
Yeah. He kind of touched on the same thing in one of his posts on Facebook this week. And I thought, oh my gosh, now I hear it here. And it does make sense because it eliminates all the forms of prejudice from entering in that if our soul is no gender. And that just it amazed me.
Soul is no gender, no race.
No color. Yeah.
Yeah.
Race.
It eliminates all the reasons for prejudice.
Exactly.
The reason for gender is for reproduction.
Well, that's true.
Yeah, soul.
I thought that had to do with washing dishes and things.
No, it's
That's
Spanish,
it.
no, it's
That's
Irish.
Handing out the remote control.
I watched this so about you talking. I watched in Facebook
Oh,
talking about soul no has gender.
Yeah.
I watch it too.
Good.
But if this is interesting, how the heaven is probably a plane that is plenty of souls without gender. It's I was thinking of that. It's probably it's an energetic field.
At the same time, Baha'u'llah says we will recognize each other. Souls will recognize each other. So it's obvious not by our gender we're going to recognize each other in the next world,
It's our
right?
cluster.
A cluster of souls,
Wow.
Well, how about the neuroscience of gender-specific hormones dictating personality and behavior?
but just get rid of that. What we're looking for.
Actually, you will probably you will know the soul, whether female or male, but the gender that I think he's referring to is the rational soul. In other words, who is the reflection of divine creation in that level, because beauty, because you still know the beauty of the individual when they die. They form their own personality and their reality. You still know this was this universe is in the next world, but it's different. The attraction is different. The interaction is different.
It's not by your gender.
By your gender, no. It's by your attributes, by the rank and quality station. Actually, the
attributes.
The realm of God operates on the ranks that you have, the spiritual qualities, and the station you have achieved. So that in that category, after that, we don't know how you're going to look like.
Because it is not a human existence, right? It's other.
It's in a spiritual form. It's all love and beauty and attraction in a form that we don't experience it on this earth.
Light.
Yeah.
We're told to pray for the advancement. those life forms in the spiritual world. But it always worried me. I'd always pray for Vicky, and then I thought, well, when I get there, I'm going to have to catch up. Because I've been praying for all these years.
Yes, but
Yeah.
also they pray for us as they pray for
Yes.
for you.
Yes.
So. So she's praying for you.
This is totally aligned with the concept of unity. Because there is probably a correlation because unity is just one. Wow. Wow.
Okay, I'm going to read. In the passage below, the Universal House of Justice identifies some of the questions that the process of learning must address. The process of learning must address. Numerous, of course, are the questions that the process of learning now underway in all regions of the world must address. And then they list them. How to bring people of different backgrounds together in an environment which, devoid of the constant threat of conflict and distinguished by its devotional character, encourages them to put aside the divisive ways of a partisan mindset, fosters higher degrees of unity of thought and action, and elicits wholehearted participation. So, how to bring people together. Number 2, how to administer the affairs of the community in which there is no ruling class with priestly functions that can lay claim to distinction or privilege. 3, so how can we do the priestly functions? We need to learn how. How to enable contingents of men and women to break free from the confines of passivity and the chains of oppression in order to engage in activities conducive to their spiritual, social, and intellectual development. So what do we have to do? We have to learn how to break the confines of passivity and the chains of oppression. And then we need to learn how to help youth navigate through a crucial stage in their lives and become empowered to direct their energies towards the advancement of civilization. Big job. How to create dynamics within the family unit that lead to material and spiritual prosperity without instilling in the rising generations feelings of estrangement toward an illusory other or nurturing any instinct to exploit those regulated to this category. Okay, so that's a big job too, the families. How to make it possible for decision making to benefit from a diversity of perspectives through a consultative process which, understood as the collective investigation of reality, promotes detachment from personal views, gives due importance to valid empirical information, does not raise mere opinion to the status of fact, or define truth as the compromise between opposing interest groups. Wow. So those are things that the House of Justice identifies as some of the things that a process of learning must address, some of the areas that a process of learning. So they've embarked us on this process of learning, right? And in what we are doing, we need to be learning these things, how to do these things. So this is pretty specific, right? And pretty overarching and
Overwhelming.
and overwhelming. Okay. And that's just some, right? To explore questions such as these and many others certain to arise, the Baha'i community has adopted a mode of operation characterized by action, reflection, consultation, and study. And so that's that cycle that I was saying. Action, reflection, consultation, study. Action, reflection, consultation, study. Okay. Study which involves not only constant reference to the writings of the faith, but also the scientific analysis of patterns unfolding. Indeed, how to maintain such a mode of learning in action, how to ensure that growing numbers participate in the generation and application of relevant knowledge, and how to devise structures for the systematization of an expanding worldwide experience and for the equitable distribution of the lessons learned. These are themselves the object of regular examination. The two passages quoted above merit ongoing reflection. For the purpose of our explorations today, reread them in your group and identify and discuss some of the main points. Once you feel you have a good grasp of the content of the two passages, turn to the second and look again at the questions the House of Justice presents as examples of objects of learning at this level of generality. Questions that Baha'is are examining in the most unassuming settings across the globe. Consider the process of learning already unfolding in the cluster in which you reside, or one in which you are familiar. How is each of these questions being addressed? And that, and there's a whole list here. So it says, in relation to bringing people of different backgrounds together, how are we addressing that in our clusters? Because we represent more than one cluster here. So how are we addressing in our clusters bringing people of different backgrounds together? I can say in this cluster, people in this cluster are engaged in Bridges Out of Poverty, are engaged in the Multi-Faith Council, are engaged in Water for Ishmael, are engaged in Sylvania Area Family Services, are engaged in many ways and are engaged in their jobs, in their area of work, where we are bringing different peoples together, right? How about anybody add anything else?
Christy and I may be starting something there. There's an organization called Not in Our Town, which has been in effect now for about 4 or 5 years. And the effect of it is to bring people together. And Bowling Green, it's bringing the university and the city together and all the residents within. But it's also aimed at doing what they can against racial discrimination. That's other types of discrimination too. And there's going to be a prayer breakfast and a meeting, what's that day, April the 5th? I think.
That rings a bell.
Yeah, I made a reservation for Maria and I to attend, and Christy's, I think, going to attend.
No,
But,
I can't.
Well, you can't make it. Oh, that's
I
right.
have my energy assessment.
Yes, Columbia Gas Energy Assessment. But it's something that is worth exploring because it is an action group, but then we'll weigh it against if there's anything that crosses the lines as far as Baha'is believe in, to make sure, but I'm sure we're going to be okay with it from what I've read so far.
And what is this gathering called again?
Not in our town. It means that
like
all those barriers, that type of discrimination, not going to happen in our town.
That's
Yeah,
great.
yeah.
Great idea. Anything else to add to that in terms of what we're doing in our little areas? Okay, how about in relation to administration of the affairs of the community? Remember, the House of Justice was saying we need to learn how to do those priestly functions, right? And administer the affairs of the community. And so how are we learning how to do that? I would say that in our little cluster, we've been learning how to do that in our cluster reflection meetings that we hold every 3 months. One's coming up on the 17th of April. We learn that in our deliberations that most recently have happened like through email or at feasts or things like that, where we're trying to consult and make decisions as a community. We learn that by our various paths of service to individual members of the community. Like I'm thinking people are ill or need visits, need people to bring them food or to visit them. These are things typically that clergy would fall on the shoulders of clergy. This is a religion without clergy. So somehow it has to, these functions, these clergy functions or priestly functions, are part of all of us to absorb, right, as a community. So we all have to absorb them, and so we have to learn how to do that, right? Anybody else have anything to add?
I think we are given in our faith, since there is no clergy and we are matured, God has made this a redundancy of potential command as part of our operating mode. That means we are all clergy. At any moment, you are the minister. At any moment, and you see the need, you're going to address that issue. Don't wait for another person to say, do it. Go do it.
That's the job.
That's the job. You see the problem, you answer the issue.
Now, we're primarily talking about Baha'i community here, right? Or are we also talking about residential community?
Well, I think sometimes we shouldn't make the distinction so much, right?
I've often thought, I'll be attending my city council meetings more often. It's open to the public to hear what's going on, and they'll take questions from the audience. And sometimes they've got to be presented ahead of time. But there may be issues that would come up that do have a connection to the Baha'is and what our beliefs are. And and you get a chance to rub elbows when there's a social time to talk over some of these things. So there's maybe a little bit of effectiveness that could happen there too.
Absolutely. The House of Justice is saying that we as the Baha'i community need to learn how to do this. This process of learning has to involve this. It doesn't say just within your Baha'i community. Greater. I mean, John has brought so much learning just from all the organizations that he has put his little...
And consider 2 sections ago, it was deeds, not words.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So rather than attend meeting to talk about ideas or platitudes, do some concrete model and then bring it. That's what the world needs. Yeah. Everybody believes in world peace, but do we have it? Everybody talks about world peace, but where's the problem? So again, I think that in terms of the administration of the affairs of the community, you need to embody the principles of the Baha'i faith, not for uniformity of religion.
Christy wrote a letter to the editor, 4 or 5 years ago, that was in the Blade.
Quite a while ago.
Quite a while ago. And
Is that the science and religion?
Yes, right, science and religion, right. The melding of the two, the support, the connection of the two, yeah. Because there have been some articles in the Blade that wanted to separate the two. It should never come together and get in the way of each other. And Christy wrote a great article. Just as an example of how you...
Exactly. So the next one says, so this, because we want to finish here, this process of learning must address the relation to the empowerment of youth. So how can we see that in our in our little localities. So, I had mentioned a few things that we were doing. Also Peggy, when she's not administering to the needs of her daughter and new grandson, had started bringing the youth from Deb's cluster together to help empower them in terms of their own paths and so on and so forth. So I think that we saw this beginning. Jennifer's working with this, so this one maybe more people have something to say about in relation to the dynamics within a family unit. That was very interesting that House of Justice included this. This is what we have to do. What does everybody else think about that? Have something to share. We all are part of family units. What struck me is that the House of Justice is talking about recognizing and the rights of all the members, right? And members of family units have rights, every member of them. Did you have something you wanted to say?
Yeah, I guess when in the family stand up to serve it, maybe devotional meeting in home, all the acts of service, sharing in home, anyways, the family members can see involucrated. They are part of this.
Mm-hmm.
When open your house for all the activities for the community, all the members in the family are part.
Mm-hmm.
This is the reason why I start open my house in Spain, because I want my children they enjoy this environment.
Mm-hmm.
And they learning about, I want to keep this.
Okay. Anybody have anything else? It's great.
Well, within our marriage, taking the three-part Baha'i question, Barb answers all three correctly, which makes her a Baha'i, but she's a committed Christian. And she is committed to the actual teachings of Baha'i principles. In that, she has her sphere of influence, and I have mine.
Mm-hmm.
But together, we form an ideal, but each one of us has our own areas of influence. And both her and I don't overlap with our work.
It's because you're both God-centered.
Yeah.
The light shines out through the many panels of the different faiths.
I think you and Barb is not 1 + 1 is 2. Your 1 + 1 is many.
3. Synergy, for sure.
Great.
Okay, all right, and then moving right along, because this is the last thing before we close for tonight, in relation to decision making. I think we need to commit to study Unit 2 of Book 10, Consultation. We can make a decision right here in this little family unit of a study circle and
We consult and say yes.
and consultant. Well, thank you, friends.
To you.
Very good.
Next meeting announcements.